What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, a P.O. Box, and Locals, Patreon. And all of these, all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to, provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Well, I told you guys before, you two together is like a fine wine. So I thought, what better way to spend my Thursday afternoon? I'm in the Midwest. I'm in Ohio. It's fall-like, and, let's have some fine wine this Thursday evening with my friends Matt Bracken and Jim Kunstler. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, well, I'm more like Williams electric shave in a bell jar or something. In a mason jar.
Yeah, I'm more like an avocado you bought a month ago.
So, Jim, I want to start off with you. Matt and I talk all the time, and you and I have not caught up in a while. And one of the things that you said you wanted to discuss was Charlie Kirk and the assassination and the aftermath of all that. So I'll kick it off with you.
Well, what I wanted to talk about specifically was the aftermath of Charlie's assassination, and obviously it was just a terrible epically important act, is that we seem to be entering suddenly into a new American evangelical phase of history. And I'm a little disturbed about getting into another great awakening. These religious awakenings that we have in America are periodically not altogether the greatest things. However, I got to say this. I do, and this is as an American Hebrew, which many listeners may not enjoy hearing, but as an American Hebrew, I think that it's probably altogether good for us to be a Christian nation, or at least a nation that is somehow based in Christian morals and values for the most part. I just think that we were a healthier nation when we were able to do that, and it was easier for us to construct a consensus about decent behavior when that was the case. So, on the one hand, I'm a little suspicious about religious revivals of any kind, because they tend to quickly get hysterical. And on the other hand, I have to say that I think that a return to some kind of a basic Christian morals, a great, let me say that again, some kind of a basic Christian moral system would probably be advantageous for us.
It's I don't know what happened to Matt. We lost him. He dropped off somewhere. But
maybe he had to go feed the dog. Anyway, I hope that was coherent. I hardly got any sleep last night, so my brain is kind of a little bit half miswired today. So.
No, you know what? I agree. It's a fine line, right? With the whole idea of nationalism and pushing religion on people, but yet the country, in my opinion, and I didn't live during the 50s, 60s, or even the 70s. I was born in 78 when religion was mandated, more so not mandated, but more so involved in the household, right? Church was a requirement. When I grew up, not a requirement, but a lot more people went to church.
Well, it was just more of an actual activity that people enacted. They went to church. There was no mandate about it. What you're describing, I think, is simply that very consensus about morals and decent behavior and beliefs and values that we no longer have. So, you didn't have to go out and state it. You didn't have to mandate it. You didn't have to force people. Although, I'm sure that there was a certain amount of pressure in individual families to conform to whatever, church-going routine they had. But it wasn't a mandate. It was that consensus that's now broken.
Well, and the question is, can it get back to that period? Or
Well, look, these are very, we're kind of seeking for some very fundamental values, like do unto others as you would want them to do unto you, and love your fellow man, and things that are just so fundamental that they don't require a whole lot of interrogation and hand wringing to understand them.
This episode is brought to you by McIlvaney Financial Group. Their advisors bring a depth of knowledge and experience that allow them to serve their clientele with care, ensuring their financial needs are met now and in the future. Personally, I'm not saying cash is worthless, but you can see what's happening. It's worth less every year. Gold is the opposite. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to www.mcilvaney.com/coffeeandamike. Matt will be back here in a second. But, yeah, well, and everybody's looking for, one of the things I think with it too is people want to get their life back to what it was before, right? And they feel like maybe if this could get them a step closer if we move back into more of that religious. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but
No, you're not.
okay. Help me, Jim.
You're in some fuzzy place. No, I think it's really simple that what we're seeing in the American left and the Democratic Party is something that's so insane that it is impelling probably a majority of the people in America toward some reset of moral agreement about what is okay and what is not okay. There's nothing really mysterious about it. We see this behavior that is just outlandishly, garishly crazy. This whole thing about transgender assassins. We've had one after another, and it has gotten to be such a routine thing that we forget how completely insane it is, how completely messed up these people's lives are. And, these are lives and troubled lives that really don't yield to any kind of, rational analysis. These are people who are severely messed up. And, we pretend to, the part of what's going on with the left is to put them into therapeutic categories that more or less leave them within the moral Overton window of normal American behavior. But they're not. They're way outside. They're on the margin. And marginal people belong on the margin, and they deserve to be thought of as marginal, and in this case dangerous, very dangerous, obviously. So that is driving, in my opinion, that's driving this urge to return to some sort of a coherent and fairly cut and dry moral order about what's okay, what's not okay, what's pathological, and what's healthy. And there you have it. And for many hundreds of years, there were some basic tenets of Christian value of the Christian value system that served that purpose pretty well. Things that I just mentioned. Do unto others as they would do unto you, and treat your fellow man properly, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm in favor of restoring that set of values.
I have to tell you, I was in Chicago last week, and my first time ever being in downtown Chicago, and walking around there, so pretty. They have that lakefront course you can run on. Esplanade, and you could. I took the Riverwalk going at one point one direction, and then the other way I went by the planetarium and all that, and so many active people, young people that were running up and down it. But then, I'm walking around in the loop and I'm just seeing, like, you're seeing people sitting up against the brick wall, smoking a bowl of dope, men dressed up like women, wearing extensions with beards, wearing lipstick. And I'm just like, when did we get to a point where everything has just become this is so normalized?
Well, it's crept up on us insidiously over the last 20 years, and especially over the last 10 years. And, the Democratic Party has obviously turned it into a weapon in their ongoing persecution of the American people.
Well, and it feels like, I don't know. I mean, what is your take on? Well, let me share with you my concern and my theories. Not even my theories, but my thoughts of all the aftermath of all this, because, I feel like the right now could potentially clamp down more censorship, more. I mean, you're seeing now the pendulum swinging where anybody that's said anything despairing about Charlie Kirk, I mean, people are losing their jobs. So it's like the playbook has now moved over to the other side.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is interesting, but these companies if they are private companies, they certainly have the right to fire people for what they construe to be indecent behavior, and I think some people have been fired from government agencies for that too, and that's not exactly the same thing as censorship. As far as I'm concerned, that's just acknowledging that there is decent behavior, and then there's behavior that's not so decent, and it's exactly the kind of thing that we have to start making setting boundaries on and making distinctions for. So it's not the same as going on Facebook and throwing off all the people who complain about the vaccinations.
Well, and what I mean by that is, more censorship coming in relation to it, where there's going to be some type of...
I don't think so, no. And I actually think that we could use a whole lot of coming down on this group of people. I think they need to be come down on. They need to be disciplined. They need to be prosecuted. They need to feel the pain. So that's fine with me.
Yeah,
and it's not the same as censorship. It's we're not doing what the left was doing over the last 10 years, because what the left was doing was based on lies and untruth.
I still can't believe that. I don't know if I told you this. I used to see Charlie at the grocery store. And
yeah, I heard that.
Wasn't a couple of months ago. It was a Tuesday night. I walked right past him, and the employees there never had anything bad to say about him.
Well, why would they? I mean, he's a decent guy. He's a perfectly lovely person. So, really, who's surprised about that?
Well, you never know until when you hear about somebody in actual reality versus what you see on stage.
Yeah.
But Rob Schneider was another one. They say he's like the nicest guy in the world.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
But I still can't believe that he's not alive anymore.
Well, believe it. He's not alive. They took him out. He's dead. There seems to be some interesting argument about exactly who took him out and what was going on with that operation. And I'm not an expert in that, but I've certainly heard enough about it to be a little bit skeptical. My tendency is, I tend to go in the direction of what's known as Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the best. But I think there's some wiggle room in this one. It's a little bit weird, the things about the rifle loads and the rifle itself, and how it got off the roof, and whether it even did get off the roof at all, or whether the shot came from the roof, and how a 30-06 round could not have an exit wound, and stuff like that.
And the inscription and the bullets that were found in the woods and.
I don't know if that's I don't know. I mean, it's all part of the same picture, but what of course we haven't heard anything of is what are the results of the interrogation of Tyler Robinson. We haven't heard anything about what he actually told the FBI. And so, we're all basically talking out of our ass one way or another, absent that information. I mean, he may have told the FBI that, that he did the act, and he can prove it, and he told them exactly how he got the rifle up there and exactly, how it came down. So we don't know any of that.
Pure speculation at this point. And this is also, the time that we're in now, with the social media and the ability to just put information out, right? And quoting Dave Collum and Matt, we were talking about offline, the signal versus the noise, right? Because just like Butler, I hear so many different theories, and here we are again in this world that we're living in, where you have the ability anybody could just write information and just share it. And if they have a decent audience or a huge audience, it can gain traction so fast.
Well, I'm going to pass this off to Matt for a minute because I have to go upstairs and take the salsa out of the canning bath.
Matt, are you back online, or else I'm going to be going on my own here solo?
Am I? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you good. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I've been listening for the last 5 minutes while I'm like running between rooms and pulling plugs and trying to reinstall Zoom. I'm in the other room, my like green screen background room. It suddenly said your computer is shutting down. I was like, what? What did I do? So I ran over here and I've got a little microphone and a camera, but I've been listening, so I'm up to speed. Yeah. Butler, from Butler to the Palm Beach golf course, and all these shootings, like the ICE facility, there's some things that are very interesting, and just for folks that to tie this together between Jim and me, Jim and I, we're very disparaged these days as boomer is like the N word, okay? It's like the B word, boomer. We're like, that guy is why you don't have a house. That boomer, he's such an ignorant bastard. He can't turn on a computer, and he watches Hannity all night, and he hasn't got a clue. He's ultra MAGA, and that's why you're living in your car, because of the boomer. But Jim Kunstler and Matt Bracken, we remember we were not these oblivious, just living off the fat of the land. We've been conservatives. I remember the assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King in 1968. I was 11. I remember them. I remember all of the left-wing terrorism that came after that. And it was all left-wing terrorism. You had the Symbionese Liberation Army. That was Patty Hearst. These communists kidnapped this rich heiress and shoved her into a closet for weeks and weeks. And we know now we know a lot more now about how you can brainwash people, how you can play good cop, bad cop, even with a prisoner, until it's like, you're so grateful. Oh, you gave me some food today. I'm on your side. So Patty Hearst, this wealthy, non-political heiress, we saw her on television. This is like in the 60s, right? Early 70s. We saw her on network television walking into a bank holding a machine gun with a beret on, like she's Che Guevara. All right. These were the things that we were aware of and we were watching from, John F. Kennedy, 63, but it really kicked off in 68, right through the early 70s. There were bombs going off every other week, or sometimes 2 days in a row. And there were snipings, bombs, kidnappings of influential people like Patty Hearst. So this isn't like something we are not experienced with. This isn't something like, oh, this has never happened before in American history. So all you guys, and I wish I was young. We all wish we were 20 again. But everybody that's just like Oh, boomer, just cancel that out. Just put a line through that. He's a boomer. But Jim and I remember these things. We were there. We were watching it, and there were only like 3 television stations. You had to wait until, Walter Cronkite or Huntley and Brinkley put the news on. And we were seeing, just crazy stuff, like the Symbionese Liberation Army doing hostage standoffs with SWAT teams. This was all really radical and new to us. And then I guess maybe you could say, all right, in the later part, 80s and 90s, it chilled out, and we went back into some kind of a status quo. And then, the Al Qaeda and ISIS was coming along, and then we had 9/11. But for people that are, say, under 50, I think that their take is that everything was just Ozzie and Harriet. Everything was Leave It to Beaver until 9/11. There was nothing before that. It was all just pretty cool America. Most Americans were racists and they were awful, and we had to save America with the civil rights, acts. But really, history just started with 9/11. I'm telling you, this communist revolution has been in the background all along. If you continue going back in history, you get to people like President McKinley assassinated. It wasn't just some crazy guy woke up one morning. He was on the spectrum. He was off his meds, which they didn't know what that meant in early 1900s, and he decided to take a shot at a president. Then there were these anarchists, the Sacco and Vanzetti. They were just misunderstood Eastern European immigrants. Probably the white Protestants, the WASPs, didn't appreciate them. So it was all right, Sacco and Vanzetti, you get the electric chair. For what? Oh, they just put bombs on Wall Street and assassinated people. No big deal. Look, this wheel is rolling and rolling and rolling. And we're just rolling into the latest iteration of this. And that's why, look, I get it. Jim and I, we're not young. And it's easy to cancel us because you can just say, boomers, they're boomer. Just if they're over 60, just absolutely discount what they say. But I'm telling you, Jim and I have seen this. This was our life. We were watching people take shots at Jerry Ford, at Governor of Alabama. What's his name? That wound up in the wheelchair. Arthur Bremer shot him. We were there for all of this, and all this is a continuation. But one thing that seems consistent is the latest version of the FBI is not interested in left-wing terrorism. Not interested, because from Obama on, all the FBI has been hiring are wokeoids. That's all they've hired. They've had a woke litmus test from the 90s on. So you can say, all right, but Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, they're in charge of the FBI now. That's like taking a ship or a fleet that's in full mutiny, communist revolution, and saying, we're going to put a new CO and XO on a helicopter and send it out to that ship of 1,000 sailors that are in full mutiny. And don't worry, because we've got the bridge now. So that means that this whole ship, the FBI, we should be able to take it right over because we put a new boss in charge. He's on the bridge and he can go on the loudspeaker and say, everybody, forget your wokeness. The FBI for almost 20 years has been recruiting these woke revolutionary minded people. That's how they got into Quantico. That's how they've risen. So from recruits to mid-grades, the FBI is actively resisting Bongino and Patel, actively resisting, just waiting them out, losing things, misdirecting things. These federal agencies have become adjuncts of revolutionary organizations because of who they've been hiring. You can't
Well,
change that overnight.
one would think that Bongino and Patel could, by this time, have been able to sort out enough about enough of their employees to understand who's reliable and who's not reliable, and to neutralize the ones that are not reliable. You'd think that by this time they would be leaning on a certain cadre of their own reliable people to discharge the important things that have to get done.
If they had an AG like a firebrand like a Matt Gaetz, but not a Pam Bondi.
Why do they need Pam Bondi to do what I just said? Why would they need her? I mean, she's got her own department to run.
Because the FBI is investigations, but when it comes to indictments, that's got to come out of the DOJ.
Well, no, I understand that, but we're not talking about indictments at the moment. We're talking about bad employees who are sabotaging the necessary work of the FBI.
I look at this. I was in the Navy. I spent time on a dozen ships for a short time. I was never like part of a ship's company, but as a frogman, I was dropped into ships for a month here and a month there. And even as a midshipman, we had to like do these little PQS, personal qualification standard things. You had to like go down to the engine room, spend a week in the engine room, spend a week here, spend a week there as a midshipman. So you'd understand all about a ship. Bringing 20 new officers onto a ship, if the ship is in like, we are what was in Russia, the ship in Russia that was part of the Bolshevik Revolution. We're part of the Kronstadt. We're part of the mutiny against you capitalists. You can put 10 or 20 officers on the bridge. They're afraid to go to the engine room. If they went to the galley or the engine room, they'd be murdered. They're in the bridge saying, Washington, we need more people, because the whole rest of the ship is a mutiny.
Now, look, I think it's an interesting comparison, interesting metaphor for what we're talking about. But it's hard for me to imagine that Bongino and Patel would be so helpless. I'd think that they would find a way to work around.
Well,
there's
rumors. There's rumors about moves against Comey. There's rumors about moves against this guy Eric Ciaramella, whose name was not allowed to be said. Remember?
Yeah. He was he was the whistleblower for the Adam Schiff inspired impeachment.
Right, feeding it to the Vindmans. So even inside the White House, you had these holdovers, like in special operations terms, you call them stay behinds. Like, oh, the Russians are going to come through Germany. We're going to leave a stay behind organization. So Ciaramella, which I love because his first three letters of Ciaramella is CIA, right? So
and he was CIA.
Was feeding the information to the Vindman brothers, who had been off. The Vindman had been, while he's like a fat colonel in the army, but in the White House, he had been offered, you can be the chief of staff of Ukraine.
Well, they were both
a 4-star general.
The Vindman twins were both naturalized American, naturalized Ukrainian immigrants who became American citizens and joined the military.
And a huge part of this is what Michael Yon calls Jurassic Trailer Park. When you peel the history back of this, it goes before the Bolsheviks. This is something that goes back into Eastern Europe, in Poland, Belarusia, Ukraine. Remember, Ukraine was never a country until after the fall of the Soviet Union. Ukraine means the borderland. It was this frontier, always was. What's his name? Zbigniew Brzezinski. He wrote this book. It's called like The Great Chessboard or something like that. But it's all about how you have to keep the Russians from ever dominating from Europe to the Pacific. And that was, before that, with the British, it was called the Great Game. We have to like
the Mackinder theory.
Yeah, Mackinder versus Mahan. We have to be like the terriers, always keeping the bear off balance, so that the bear can never have control from Antwerp to Vladivostok. And the only way into that, the soft underbelly, is Ukraine. So you have all of these people like the Kagan brothers, Kaganovich. You have what's her name? Victoria Noodleman, which was Noodleman, Americanized to Newland. These are people that were out of Russia before the Bolsheviks. I mean, they're not, and thereafter, but before the Bolsheviks, they were leaving Russia because of the oppression of the Tsars and the Cossacks. I mean, this is how far back this goes. They have a Hatfield-McCoy blood hatred of the Russian empire, going way back even before communism. It predates communism and it antedates communism. In fact, Victoria Nuland and Samantha Powers and all these famous people that we were hearing about during the, what they call the Russia hoax, they were very happy with the Soviet Union. They were doing their postgraduate work in the USSR. I mean, Bill Clinton went to Russia as a Rhodes Scholar. He loved it. It was like, these are great. Bernie Sanders, he was in the USSR, on his honeymoon. They didn't mind Russia when it was communism. But now that it's back to like the Tsars, then Putin, now they hate it again.
Yeah, well, Russia has been trying to be have relations with the rest of Europe and to be treated as another normal European nation for the last 20 years.
Yeah, they
30
tried,
years.
according to, you can read a lot about this and people deny it and so forth. But when the Berlin Wall came down, there was the offer to that NATO will not expand an inch east. If you leave Germany, if you leave East Germany, Poland, if you just leave, NATO will not expand. And Jim Baker, who was Secretary of State, it's in writing, okay. But then the people against that, the Newlands and Kagans, they'll say, well, it was never a formal treaty. The Senate didn't agree to that. But if you do handshake deals with, between like Gorbachev and Reagan and first Bush, Jim Baker, you do these handshake deals where it's like, we'll leave Eastern Europe, but you won't move NATO east. To them, that's like say the Sioux Indians meet some general in, right after Bighorn, and they say, we'll give you all the Dakotas. Okay. I'm speaking for the president. And 10 years later, they come back and say, you know what? A new general comes back and says to the Indians, all that I just said, it didn't matter because the Senate, which you never heard of, right? Back in this place called Washington, which you never heard of, didn't make it a formal treaty. So that handshake deal, forget about it. We're bringing the army in and you guys got to move to a new reservation. So it's no wonder now that nobody can take the word of America on any kind of a deal. We can't. I mean, that rolls not only in through Ukraine, but to the whole thing with Iran, the nuclear treaties we had with them. So they're all looking at us like, you make a deal with Washington, the next president comes in and said that wasn't a deal. That was just the former president. So now we're going to, deal with these guys and shoot missiles at you. Or, I mean, who's going to believe America when our word is worth nothing?
Yeah. Well, if I can shift this a little bit, the mystifying thing to me is, what is the connection between the Samantha Powers, Robert Kagans, Victoria Newlands, and this spectrum of utterly insane people in the Democratic Party, like, ranging from Jasmine Crockett and AOC to the furries and the transgender Antifas. They all seem to be playing on the same team, and yet it's hard to understand why. Look, Victoria Newland's father was an eminent surgeon in up here where I live in the Hudson Valley. And, she's not some, lumpen prole, offspring of some lumpen prole, starving peasant family. What's in it for her to, be part of some kind of a communist revolution, and the same kind of, craziness that is going on the other side of the Democratic Party spectrum?
I think
It's a big tent, but it's a big tent that's got such a freak show going in it that it's absolutely incomprehensible what
it is a
what the
freak show.
purpose is.
It is a freak show, and all they have in common is that they're anti-status quo, and today status quo is rolled into like this nucleus, which they perceive as a huge danger. That's why they call us Nazis, Hitler, fascist, Gestapo.
Quite to the contrary, Matt. What you get the sense that the Newlands and many of the people who are actually in government, as opposed to the transgender Antifa crazy people, the people in government are absolutely invested in the status quo, and especially in the whole series of grifts and frauds that they're involved in with, taking taxpayer money and stuffing it into their own pockets.
Yeah, that's where I see a lot of positive action coming out of guys like Mike Benz,
Sure,
and Data Republican.
But they're not in power.
No,
they're sitting on the sideline kibitzing.
But see, they're handing this stuff to Patel and Bongino on a platter.
That's true.
Because it's not going to come up through the FBI, because the FBI is still like looking for the Whitaker kidnappers from the right wingers. Okay. So it's not going to percolate up through the middle of the FBI, because they were all hired under the woke litmus test. Mm-hmm. But Data Republican and Mike Benz that are data analysts, they can hand it to them like, here it is on a plate. Get somebody at the DOJ and let's make a case out of this. But we are really right now on the cusp. And 9/11 was okay. It's external. It's the jihad. It's the we shouldn't be in the Middle East. So Osama bin Laden is mad at us. And what we're on the cusp of now is a period like 1968 to 75, where I wouldn't be surprised at all if like Mike Homan's wife is kidnapped, right?
Yeah.
And then a month later, she's in a bank with a machine gun. I hate my husband. That sounds ridiculous today, but you and I, we grew up, we watched that, we saw that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What perplexes me are things like, opening the web news sites this morning and seeing that the FBI is just beginning to think about investigating George Soros. Say what? Why haven't they been investigating him from January 20th?
Or Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh is a firebrand.
Yeah.
But he has a great way with words. And he's done a few riffs like on YouTube and on X, where he's just flipping the script of the last year. If right wingers were like sniping out Planned Parenthood, and had killed the equivalent of a Charlie Kirk, and it almost killed Joe Biden, on and on and on, everything parallel the other way, the left would lose their mind. They'd be arresting everybody in the right wing.
Yeah,
and
it would be the night of the long knives.
It would, and this, for me, this is because for institutionally, going on 20 years, the FBI has been hiring woke lefties who are, we saw the pictures during the BLM riots of all these like chubby FBI chicks taking a knee for BLM. That's the FBI. And I go back to the ship analogy. You can send, a new captain executive officer out to the ship. They're like barricaded on the bridge. If I leave the bridge, we'll be killed.
All right. Well, we've already been there. We've been to that.
But that's a problem that we can't just turn this, because everybody in the FBI and most of the DOJ, they still are goalkeeping for the left. They're not going to. To them, Antifa and all these marches, pallets of bricks get dropped off. Okay, this is a gimme. You give this to an FBI intern. Those bricks that were on the parade ground or the parade march route a day before that were just dropped off, no construction, right? Just somebody dropped a pallet of bricks off where there would be a riot.
Matt, that was
tell me they
Matt,
don't know who did that, and
that was then. That was then. This is now. That was 2020. I think that we're now in a period. We're like 2 weeks after the assassination of this rather important figure.
Yeah.
And
I'd put it up there with MLK in terms of its power, of its importance.
Yeah, I agree with you. But it seems to me that we're at a point now where they're going to have to bring the hammer down on all these people, whether they're the Russiagators or the Antifas. This is not going to continue.
If they can't, what if they don't and they can't?
And that's the thing. There are too many impatient people out there who are normal people who have lost their patience. And so if they don't start bringing the hammer down, I think we're going to see something like civil war.
Yeah.
Well, it appears that let me chime in here a second. It appears from the standpoint of Antifa, from what I'm seeing in Portland, because Jim, I know you're not as active on X as Matt and I, but Katie Davis Court was showing that people were getting arrested the other night in Portland.
Yeah, that was last night, I believe.
2 nights, yeah, last night and the night before.
But if they're arrested and they've got an ACLU lawyer and they're out in 5 minutes with a new debit card and a pat on the head.
No, this is different because over the last 5 years, in Oregon, back in 2020. They were basically dealing with the city police of Portland and Eugene and whatever the towns were, and it was the whole infrastructure of justice in Oregon as a locality that was letting them off the hook. And the mayor wouldn't enforce any of the laws and et cetera, and the judges let them off. They are now being subject to federal charges, and that's going to be different.
This. To bring the whole Jimmy Kimmel thing in as like a counterpoint to the Charlie Kirk assassination, a guy and what's his name, Tim Pool, he's like really on to the what's the tipping point for them going back and saying, come on back, Jimmy. Somebody shoots into an ABC affiliate, and according to Tim Pool, who has been not only doxxed but like swatted like 10 times with all kind of threats against him, he says they're bowing down. They're saying, please don't shoot any more stations. We'll let your boy be back on the air. Okay. In the 68 to 75 time frame that we remember, you and me, we could have if people might be bored, or they can go on Wikipedia or Google, but you and I lived through that. There was nobody, Huntley and Brinkley weren't saying MLK had it coming. Johnny Carson didn't say, if Martin Luther King had only not said those things, he'd still be alive today.
Yeah, well, we had a firmer sense of boundaries and a better consensus about what decent behavior was back then.
Right. And so when bombs went off, nobody was saying, well, if only our policy in Vietnam was different, maybe they shouldn't have done those bombs. That was maybe on the left, that was the thought. Okay, this is an anti-war thing, so we put a bomb in the officers' club dance at Fort Dix, to kill the young junior officers and their dates. And instead, the bomb went off in a brownstone in New York City because they were not good bomb makers, and blew up like an entire 3-story brownstone and 2 next to it, right? That's the kind of bombs they were making. And the people that weren't killed in that bomb come out of it as professors and textbook writers.
Yeah.
So they couldn't say in 1973, 72, 73, well, if we hadn't been in Vietnam, they wouldn't have been killed at that bombing in Fort Dix, or that the people that died in the brownstone, they're heroes. But they did go underground. These people did go underground for years. And when they surfaced, it was like, oh, amnesty, That was a long time ago. Now we've got this
Yeah,
this
Bill
Syrian
Ayers,
guy.
Bill Ayers and Bernadette Dorn, who were
Right.
Obama's mentors.
And now we've got kind of a parallel going on with this guy Giuliani, who was killing Americans in Iraq, who was in jail in an American, jail in Iraq for 5 years, who's a head chopper holding up heads. He's shaking hands with Trump. He's shaking hands with van der Leyen and the EU. He's coming to the UN. He's trimmed his beard.
He changed his name. Didn't he change his name?
But he's still Giuliani. That would be like that's like Osama bin Laden changing his name to Joe Smith.
I thought
still Osama bin Laden.
I thought his name was Robert Smith. I thought his name was Robert Smith, by the way.
Yeah, but we're seeing nothing will surprise me going forward. We've seen it before.
Do you think? Okay, so boomer question. Do you think because of I don't hate
You're
boomers.
not so young yourself.
No, I'm Gen X. I'm not a Zoomer. Stupid whoever came up with that
Your
Zoomer.
time will come.
I know. Well, yeah. Do you think that based upon that, going through these different periods, it's worse today than it was in the 60s or the 70s?
There's parallels, but there's a lot of differences.
But do you think it's worse? Or?
It's so different. Media is so different. There was no podcast, YouTube space. But a Jimmy Kimmel would have never come out and winked about the Martin Luther King assassination. That is really amazing to think that Jimmy Kimmel can say, Martin Luther King, he was probably killed by one of his own Black Panthers who didn't like what he was saying. Would have never happened. The country would have never stood for that. I mean, that's what he did. He came out and said, MAGA killed Charlie Kirk. And the people in these information silos, these stacks, they don't get other news. So if you tell your 30 or 40% of the population that Charlie Kirk's killer was another MAGA conservative, that's what they're going home with. And because of the silos of information, there are people that exist in such a tight bubble that if that's all they hear, they're ready to go out and start shooting because they're spending all their waking hours inside of their bubble. ICE is Gestapo, ICE is Hitler. You keep saying this and people are going to pick up a rifle and say, well, in every Psych 101 class, a classic story or example is if you knew what was going to happen in the 1930s and 1940s and you were like, Adolf Hitler's babysitter, would you strangle him? If you thought that strangling Adolf Hitler would have prevented the Holocaust or whatever, right? That's a classic Psych 101 question. Sure, if you know Hitler is rising up and you got a shot to take out Hitler, then take out Hitler. So in all the left-wing media is saying over and over and over again, Gestapo, Hitler, dictator, fascist, end of democracy. There's got to be some responsibility when somebody picks up a rifle. And just something today that's come up. This guy at the Texas ICE shooting, he's using another antique rifle. Okay, and people are wondering why antique rifles? Why these World War I, rifles? And I think that we're stumbling into a situation. The biggest Antifa organizations that are active, have websites and videos. So when they say there's no such thing, it's just an idea. These guys have websites, they have videos. So there's Rose City out in Oregon, and there's the John Brown Gun Club in North Carolina. If you want to disperse this into what they call leaderless resistance, you just want to give people that are emotionally labile a weapon. So if you have a website and you say, all of you guys come out, we're going to do some shooting. We're going to learn how to shoot like the MAGA rednecks do. And we're not taking a roll call and we don't want to know your name, but all our allies come on out. And meanwhile, at the back, if anybody doesn't have a gun, there's a barrel over there. And that barrel, hint, hint, has old guns that people bought at flea markets and, garage sales, basically untrackable guns. And then they're in the barrel back there. And if you want to ever, if things escalate and you want to shoot a fascist, maybe just grab one of those guns. It's got 10 rounds, it'll work, and we don't want to know who's got it. In our neighborhood and other places, you see these like book exchanges. People put up a little thing like, leave a book, take a book. Well, for Antifa, if you want to do this leaderless resistance model, you would say, just leave a rifle, take a rifle. We don't want to know who you are. Why are they coming up with these, 100-year-old rifles that are very difficult to trace? There's no yellow form on them. That might be a clue. But if there was any interest in the middle of the FBI, all of these Antifa shoots would be infiltrated with FBI up the wazoo, going back 10 years, 20 years. John Brown Gun Club is going to do an open shoot. Half of those guys should be FBI agents. They should know all of these people. And if they're not making arrests, it's because they're sympathetic to them. They're worried about ginning up a bogus Gretchen Whitmer fake fednapping. The FBI has totally lost my respect because they've been only hiring these woke lefties for 20 years. And it's great that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino are on the bridge of the ship, but they don't control the ship.
Do either one of you guys think that with Charlie Kirk's assassination and then what's happened at the ICE detention center in Texas, is there any sort of psyop or, the parallels with that? Any
What do you mean by that?
Parallels in terms of like
false flags?
False flags. Yes. Thanks, Matt.
No, I don't think so. We started off, an hour ago saying that there was a lot of sketchy stuff about the Charlie Kirk shooter and about, his rifle and the loads that he used, et cetera, and the behavior of it all. But on the whole, I tend to think that what you see is what you get.
Same with the shooting in Texas then too?
Yeah, that's what I think. Although I would say it's very possible that this kid was connected to a larger network of crazy people. His mother's a crazy person. His mother is some kind of, she's very active on social media, yammering about left-wing stuff. So she's trained him up pretty good.
And it would be, just throwing out this, kind of a new thread, because a lot of this we're beating the same beaten ground. If you have left-wing organizations that are having meetings and sometimes meetings where shooting, like, oh, we'll train you how to use the weapons so we can defend ourselves against these MAGA fascist Nazi Gestapos. And meanwhile, over behind Iselda's Subaru Outback, there's a barrel. So if you didn't have a rifle coming today, just pick one. It's got 10 rounds taped to the stock. We don't need to know. We don't know how they got in the barrel, and we don't know who took them out of the barrel.
Well, so what you're describing is basically a network that may appear to be an informal network, but it's really quite sturdy. And
it's very sturdy.
And there's no reason why competent FBI people could not go in there and figure out who's doing what.
It's a high-low mix. It's a high-low mix. So at the low mix, they can announce like we're going to have some shooting practice. Anybody comes, there's no roster being taken. But at the high end, they have military-grade OPSEC. You cannot join the people that are writing the website, the people that are printing the flyers. FBI can't get within a mile of those people because they've got to know who you are for years and years and years. You can't be recommended in by some guy from the shooting. These guys are very, very competent at the OPSEC level, extremely competent, which a lot of people like Mike Benz, myself, NC Scout, others, they give them a lot of credit for having extremely sturdy OPSEC to penetrate that planning level. That's where, from like George Soros up here and all the Guild of Lawyer commies, the guys that pay the bail,
the lawfare guys,
the vertical lawfare guys. The FBI should have been over this years ago. It's on the conservative side. They're so tough against them. There's a group called Atomwaffen like 10 years ago. And it was like, kind of accelerationist, super right wingers. The FBI was on them so strong, breaking up everything, that anybody that now posts anything suggesting accelerationism on the right, is accused of Fed posting. It's like automatically, anybody that says, we have to keep up with the left, we have to be as strong as them kinetically, everybody will pounce on that comment, Fed poster, because that's what the FBI did to the right side. But to the left side, nothing. From George Soros, the lawfare, the Guild of Lawyers, all of that, nothing happens. And I think it's because they've just been hiring commies for 20 years. They take a knee for BLM guys. So it doesn't matter if you put a new captain on the ship. The whole ship is in mutiny.
Yeah, I've been talking a lot about, maybe I don't know if I've talked about it with you, but the idea of Soros to me any longer. I mean, he's 95 years old, but
his organization is, remember, was it L. Ron Hubbard and who was the other, the Christian writer? They made a bet that I can create a religion that will outlive me, that will continue. It'll be a self-sustaining religion. That was Scientology.
That's right. We were talking about that last time. But also, let me.
But Soros is consider him L. Ron Hubbard of this open society. His son, Alexander Soros, is a retard. He's married to Huma Abedin, who's like the crossover to the Clinton crime family, right? So Alexander Soros is like 1% of George Soros. But George Soros created, like L. Ron Hubbard, Scientology. He created an open society in a way that it would be self-sustaining. It's got enough money and capital, it's got enough income that it can just keep rolling like a AI bulldozer.
I'm more, to me, my interest is though of like Sam Altman, Alex Karp, Peter Thiel. This is to me the present of what.
And something I learned from John Wooters on his Peter Thiel. It's a coincidence because I Googled it or I searched it, and that is his born actual name in Germany, but it's an anagram of the reptile.
Jim, that's somebody you got to get on your show. Jim, is John Waters,
the reptile.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the Sam Altman interview with Tucker talking about OpenAI. I think they are the present and the future. Soros is 95 years old. I know his organization and what have you, but these are the people that are building these instruments.
Here's a litmus test or a little instant proof of who really runs things. Ever since 3 Mile Island, nuclear power, bad. Left wing, middle of the road, nukes, bad. Oh, we need to double our power output for AI, nuclear power, good. We need more nuclear power because we have to have twice as much electricity for the AI.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that any of this is going to really pan out. It seems to me that we're going in the kind of direction that I wrote about in my World Made by Hand novels, and it seems to me there's just too much fragility out there, and there's too much incoherence. One of the things that I missed when I wrote The Lung Emergency which was nonfiction. I missed how crazy the stresses on our society would make the people. And right now, I think we're just seeing a society that is really kind of collapsing and is not going to be able to carry on with a lot of its major
Oh, I
projects,
agree.
including AI.
I agree. But the force is pushing in that direction.
Yeah, but it's going to be a tough
Also,
one.
with central bank digital currency, all these grand plots
Yeah.
to put everybody into a digital pen and control us all. But the problem, among many, is this grand plan to turn us all into penned slaves. We're in an extremely technologically leveraged era.
Mm-hmm.
We're feeding 8 billion people as while this perfect system keeps working, and ships keep leaving ports, and ships are taking grain to all these countries that don't make any food. When that breaks down, there's going to be hell to pay when the supply chains fail.
Yeah, and it's
Because
it's going to also break down simultaneously in the civilized world. So
it's something. So I just want to throw this in because in the last couple of years, I started putting rain barrels under my gutters, and for the last like 3 weeks in Florida, Northeast Florida, we had no rain. Okay, so I hadn't watered anything from a hose in like a month since last spring. My rain barrels, buckets, all that, everything I can water from my rain barrels. It didn't rain for 3 weeks. My rain barrels are dry. Got to use a hose. Today it rained for like 5 minutes. That's all. And my rain barrels were all full.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just telling people in terms of fragility, anti-fragility, if you are on city water and you are just watching rain come off of your roof, and you think that for the rest of your life, you're going to turn a water tap and water is going to come out, rain barrels, which they sell all over the place. There's, you can learn some stuff about them, but I wouldn't drink right out of a rain barrel. But if you have fresh water, you can filter it. If you have no fresh water, you're screwed. And in terms of our own people or our own selves being less fragile, yes, you plant gardens, learn about agriculture. I'm all about it. Fruit trees, you name it. If I have to live off of what I'm growing in my fruit gardens, I probably won't. But a more immediate thing is just water. And when you take into account what just goes off your roof into the ground, and that you're just depending on city water, I would advise everybody to at least start capturing your own water.
Well,
no matter where you live.
It's a problem where I live, but we don't have any water. But but to Jim's point though as well, the system will break. I mean, it's breaking, but it will fracture because one of the things that I've noticed, I've been bitching about lately, is like everywhere I go, I gotta have an app. I have to pull up my phone everywhere. If I go to the grocery store, I got to use an app to scan for sales, for just the deals.
I don't have to do any of that. I think that you just allowed yourself to get sucked into all that.
Yeah,
I got sucked in. I'm a follower.
Well, I mean, you were describing, some serious disorders in what's happened to the population, and one of them is that you make these choices that you're going to go along with an app.
Convenience.
You're going to go along with a QR code or something like
sure.
that. You don't have to do that. So just don't.
Right.
Find some way around it.
Michael,
stop complaining about it.
Michael, you got to buy a diesel RV and learn how to do your show from a diesel RV. Anywhere in the middle of the desert. Starlink.
Yeah. Well,
Mike, you can't go into your supermarket with cash money and buy a cantaloupe?
No, I can. But in order to get the sale price, if I'm buying something on sale, I have to, for Amazon, for example, if it's a Whole Foods because it's owned by Amazon, if I, Prime, you get a discount. So you have to scan your app in order to get your discount.
Well, that's nature's way of telling you to, stop fucking around looking for discounts.
This is how they catch the fish. They put bait on this thing. This is how they catch the fish.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere. If I go to the gym, I have to pull out an app. Airport, when you fly,
push-ups, pull-ups. You don't need a gym.
For your routine, for your workout routine. Why don't
Just
you just write it out on paper?
no. Just to get into the gym. No, I don't have a routine written out. I mean, just to get into the gym, I have to scan my barcode.
Yeah. There's no other way to do it.
I don't think
Michael,
so. Well, you know what? I'm gonna. You know what? I'm writing
You
all
have
this
to get
down.
an RV.
I'm writing
You have
all.
to get an RV and move out of.
I don't have to do any of
Arizona.
those things.
I'm writing all this down, and I'm gonna ask when I get back this weekend.
Yeah.
But
You
even
can
at the
do your
airport,
show from an RV.
even at the airport, though, I mean the airport, you have to scan.
Well, I don't know about that either. I mean, I haven't had to do that. I don't get my ticket on my phone. Yeah, I print my tickets out.
I print them too.
You know, if you're if you're using your phone to get on the plane, maybe you better rethink how you're doing that. Are you using your phone to get on the plane?
For my gate, yeah.
Why don't why don't you print your tickets out?
I can't. I'm gonna start doing that now. I'm gonna.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, think about it. You don't have to get sucked into all that. And so then, you get sucked into that, and then you develop a fantasy that the world is sucking you into this thing that you can't get out of, and it's just not true.
This is how they catch the fish. Okay, this is how they catch the fish. All right, it's got a nice worm right there. You don't need that worm.
I'm glad I brought this up. I'm
Yeah,
doing
I'm
some real.
sure.
I'm doing some real self-reflection now. Thank
Well,
you.
you've been
Thank you
doing
to
it
both
a
of you.
lot. You know, you've been doing it a lot in your show, which I listen to most of the time. And I just think it's important for you to know that this fantasy that you have of being powerless is just, not true.
Yeah, I don't think it's powerless. I just think that where I was going with it was the idea that the more systems and workflows they put into place makes it more likely that it'll eventually crack. And when it does crack,
Well, that's true because
that's what I meant by that. That's what I was
what
going
you're
with
seeing, what you're seeing is Joseph Tainter's classic overinvestments in complexity with diminishing returns.
Yep.
So, and if, one of the biggest complaints in America now is that nothing works. Nothing works. You call a company that you're doing business with, they don't even want to answer their phone. They don't want to talk to you. You try to get something straightened out with your internet provider. Yeah, you have to talk to a robot for 20 minutes before a live human being comes on. So, all of this elegant technology and all of this heaping of hypercomplexity on more hypercomplexity is just fucking us up and making it more likely that nothing's going to work. And that when nothing works, you better have some serious skills for living, because you're not going to be able to depend on any of that stuff.
Yeah, one of the precious metals YouTube guys that I follow, just a coin shop guy. It's called Silver Dragons. If anybody's interested, I don't watch every show they do, but it caught my eye that they went. They're in Oregon, right? And they went to a farmer's market in Oregon with junk silver, 90% junk silver dollars, 50 cent, 25 cent. And they were just interested, how many people at a farmer's market, instead of American dollars or scan my phone or QR, how many of them will just sell me produce for silver coins, pre 65 silver coins? And 90% of them did. These farmers market guys were very dialed in. It was like, right now, the silver value of this 50-cent piece is $15. Will you take that for $15 of your jars of honey? And 90% of them said, hell yeah, because they understand that the silver money a year from now will still be silver money. And the dollar is the dollar that was the silver 50-cent piece that's $15 today in paper money will be $30 or $40 next year. So at the retail farmers market level, the flea market, the actual person to person in real life retail, people do get that. And I'm not plugging anybody buying junk silver, but I have some. Is there's going to be something besides, I have to learn how to grow food, right? Or I'll starve, because I'll starve, because frankly, I have a tremendous amount of respect for farmers and gardeners that can make stuff come out of the ground.
Yeah, it's tough. You know,
It's very tough.
besides growing salad and potatoes, you know, it's tough.
It's
And
tough.
peppers, you
But
know.
when you mentioned potatoes in the South, I read up on this during the Great Depression. There were people who were like the Johnny Appleseed of sweet potatoes that were going around saying, you don't have to starve. You can make enough sweet potatoes in 10 by 10 plot to feed your family.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, there is knowledge out there about, like, we're not talking about gourmet living. We're just talking about not starving in the next year.
Well,
And in the
speaking
South,
of sweet potatoes, I tried that up here in the Northeast in the Hudson Valley, and my sweet potatoes just didn't develop. We don't have enough heat up here, and for an extended
yeah,
season.
you have to have your band, but potatoes are probably great up there.
Yeah, we do pretty well with those. Yeah,
Right, and
I was surprised at how easy it is to grow them.
And that was, going back to Irish history, because I'm writing a book, one of these future fiction books in Ireland, in the potato famine genocide of the 1840s. Ireland was still producing grain and cattle and shipping it to England, but the Irish people had been forced into these tiny little 1 acre tenant plots, and the only way they could produce enough calories to survive on their tiny little tenant farmer plots. Remember, they used to own the whole thing. English came in and said, "No, we'll rent you an acre over there, okay, if you work on my estate." It used to be my land. Well, it's our estate now. Anyway, there was enough calories coming out of potatoes on those 1 acre plots to feed the Irish people. And the potato blight, the most recent thinking on this is it's like a technological backspin. The blight came from guano from South America. This is like the Wuhan virus. Let's go into a deep cave and find the worst virus on bats that we would have never known about in 1,000 years, unless Fauci sent people into the worst caves in South Asia to find the most disgusting bats. So this guano that was going to increase production of farming in Europe brought the blight that killed the potatoes, that wiped out and famined the Irish, which caused them the Irish diaspora.
That may be basically so, but I would say you have to remember that guano was mined wherever there were large deposits of it. It was just a common commodity fertilizer for the whole world.
But it didn't
at a certain point.
But it wasn't a mass. It wasn't a mass thing until these big clipper ships in the 19th century that could bring, giant hull quantities of it to Europe.
Yeah,
and something in the guano.
But still, it was just a commodity. It wasn't like a COVID bat virus operation.
No, but it wasn't. But the guano from some cave in Portugal forever was not like now shiploads of South American guano.
But they didn't know that it had a virus in it.
Of course not.
That's the point.
No, of course
not. It was just guano to them.
But it was technology. One of the reverse effects of this, increased production, better living through science, was this guano from South America had something in it that killed the potatoes in Ireland, and the potatoes also came from South America, from Pizarro, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't together. The potatoes that they were freeze drying in the Andes never connected with the bat guano caves somewhere else in South America, but they connected in Ireland, and half of the Irish died and the rest tried to leave. Yeah. Anyway, that's going off on an Irish riff, but
I want to take these last few minutes, just put the end of the world stuff on hold. And Jim, I want you to participate in this. Matt has sent me on this movie scheduling. So I don't know if you heard, I started with Ford versus Ferrari, and then I saw F1, and then he had me watch all the Clint Eastwood spaghetti westerns, which I had never seen, and Once Upon a Time in the West. So you and I have talked about movies before. I know I need to see Miller's Crossing, which I still haven't seen, by the Coen brothers. Boy. I know. That's your favorite Coen brothers movie, right?
It's my favorite movie, period.
Miller's Crossing?
Yeah.
You never
Never saw it.
It's an amazing movie.
What else do you recommend, Jim? Send me on a path.
Writing down.
Well, you should see the entire Coen Brothers collection. And if you can find them, it would be worth your while to revisit some of the great works of Robert Altman. Robert Altman was like the Coen Brothers of the 1970s.
Nashville and
Yeah, Nashville and McCabe and Mrs. Miller in particular are wonderful movies and just wonderful works of cinema. And geez, I don't know. I haven't seen F1. I saw Ford versus Ferrari, and I kind of admired that. I haven't really seen a movie that I got excited about in a long, long time. And I will not go to superhero movies or any of that garbage. So,
amen.
Yeah.
Why is Miller Crossing one of, if not your favorite films?
Why is it?
Yeah.
It's beautifully made. It got a just breathtakingly intelligent script, a beautifully constructed, made up world of 1930s gangsters that you can't really place in any particular city, but it seems to be kind of the entire rectified essence of American 1930s gangsterhood. A beautiful use of the lingo of the time, with some of their own kind of additions to it. It's just a masterful movie, and it's worth paying attention to.
Matt, any other movie suggestions for me?
Yeah, I'd like to plug, and I have often on the internet, not here, but the Last Valley, which is James Clavell, who did Shogun and other things, with an amazing soundtrack by one of the great musicians of that time. But it's Omar Sharif and a young Michael Caine, and it's during the 30 Years War in Europe. And you can find it on the internet. You can just Google it or just look it up on YouTube. Just watch it on YouTube. But the Last Valley. So it's the 30 Years War, and this little band of warlord mercenaries stumbles into this perfect little idyllic rich valley in Austria, and they decide, instead of just massacring everybody like their SOP, they're going to winter over there, right? And just forget their own big army. But that's Omar Sharif and young Michael Caine, and it was a huge movie in terms of its production, but I think it had bad distribution in the USA, which sometimes happens. It's like a British European film, and it was at the end of the Vietnam War, and people just didn't want to watch war movies for a while. But I think that's
I never heard of it. It
The
sounds,
Last
sounds
Valley.
good.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece. And there's a few places you can watch the whole thing, but there's a YouTube channel where you can just watch it in 12-minute chunks, and you can because it's the YouTube versions of it are not that high def, you don't lose much by seeing it on a small screen, because you'd have to find some remastered version to watch it on a big screen anyway. But the soundtrack is amazing. It's James Clavell writing, and I think it's a masterpiece, like a forgotten masterpiece. The Last Valley.
Jim, where can people find you?
I publish my blog, Clusterfuck Nation, every Monday and every Friday. So I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and write it tomorrow.
And Jim has a new book out.
I do. Well, it's not out yet. It's coming out November 1st. You got a pre-publication version of it, but
I didn't get a pre-publication of this version.
I ran out of them. And I had to pay for them. So
No, I'll buy a book. I'll buy a book from you. Don't worry about it.
okay. And anyway, so Clusterfuck Nation is on Substack, and it's the actual website is kunstler.com, my last name.com.
We'll talk about the book really quick. Give a little shot.
Well, yeah, the book is called Look, I'm Gone, and it's a comedy set the week of the Kennedy assassination in New York City in 1963, and the central character is a 12-year-old boy. who's having some serious misadventures that week in New York, and the climax takes place in J.D. Salinger's kitchen, where they end up arguing about Eastern religion during a blizzard.
Holden Caulfield.
Well,
No.
my book is very much intertwined with the whole idea of Salinger's literary career and his most famous creation, Holden Caulfield, The Catcher in the Rye. And he's been gone now for about 15 years, passed away, I guess, in 2010. So I think I'm the first person who has turned him into a character in a work of fiction.
And he didn't have much to say before that either.
Oh no! Well, he was he avoided publicity.
Yeah, I think what's the name? Dylan, the poet. No, who was it? Said
Dylan Thomas?
no, I'm probably messing up poets, but he said if you want to find the meaning of the poem, read the damn poem, or read the poem.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. Read the poem.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my book. How about you, Matt?
I'm working on an Ireland novel, and I'm going to start like putting out little pieces of it, because I think Ireland is going to be, hopefully, hope is not a plan, but I think that's where the tide might turn. That might be like the Stalingrad or the Moscow, where this whole envelopment of Europe reverses.
Matt, how can they stand what their leaders are doing to them over there? It's just mystifying to me.
There is no democracy in these countries. Their democracies are. It would be more honest if they just had Ceausescu's as prime ministers. It would be more honest. They go through this kabuki theater of democracy. It's completely bogus. 100%. But I'm on X, and I do Substack, but not often enough. I'm not the disciplined hardcore writer that Jim is, that can get up at 4 a.m. and crank out fantastic prose twice a
Oh,
week.
shucks.
I saw him do it, man, and it's legit. He writes his own stuff.
I
I
know.
witnessed him.
I know.
He doesn't have a stunt writer
I know.
doing
Squeezing
it for him.
Just taking that radish and squeezing blood out of it every week.
I didn't even want to walk on the steps for an hour and a half, like on the second floor, because I didn't want to disrupt him.
Say there's no blood in that turnip, and there it is, twice a week.
Guys,
That's
as always,
discipline.
I enjoy our conversations. I look forward to the next one. Thanks for doing this.
It's a pleasure as ever to see you guys.
Always.
Mic drop.